Well, ever since Narendra Modi became Prime Minister last May, journalists here have had very little access to the man who led the BJP to its most stunning election victory. But now a new book, The Modi Effect, by British journalist and former Labour Party Director of Communications Lance Price, finally gives us an insight into Mr. Modi's mind as Prime Minister. The book has anecdotes that we've only heard about now, like what Mr. Modi was doing on counting day or what he really thinks was the reason for the BJP's huge victory. Well, Lance Price is here in the studio with us tonight. Mr. Price, you must be quite pleased because your book is generating a lot of interest here in India. It's creating a lot of headlines. I'm sure you're not surprised by that.
Well, I'm delighted, but Mr. Modi has a way of making news and of attracting attention wherever he goes and whatever he says. So I knew when I embarked on writing a book principally about his campaign, that it was bound to generate interest, but not just here in India, I hope across the world. It's been written to be of interest both to people who lived through the campaign, but also to people outside of India who are coming to Narendra Modi afresh. They hadn't really had much experience of him before, they didn't know him very well before, and I hope through this book they'll begin to understand him a little better.
One of the key things to this book is the fact that you've had unprecedented access to him after he became Prime Minister, something that journalists in India do not have. In fact, it's largely a one-way communication at the moment for journalists in India from the Prime Minister to the rest of us. But you were able to interview him at length for several hours. Why do you think you got that access? How did that happen?
I think probably there were two reasons for it. One was that he wanted the scale of his victory and the success of his campaign to be acknowledged outside India. So I watched the campaign from home in Europe, and we got snippets of it, of course we did, and it was being reported, but it was not reported on anything like the scale, for example, in my country, in Britain, as an American election would be. And yet here we are in the largest democracy on earth, a very exciting campaign. And I think that Mr. Modi himself probably felt that people outside of India deserved and probably wanted to know a bit more about it. And possibly the other reason that he was happy to talk to me was that I came without any prejudices, without any preformed views about his campaign. And it's probably fair to say, you would know better than me, but I would think that probably most people in India have made up their minds about Mr. Modi. They're for him or they're against him.
There are very strong views about him.
I get the impression that there aren't many don't knows left in Indian politics, and perhaps I was able to come with a fresh mind to look at things afresh.
Okay, let me just get to the book though. One of the interesting things you say right at the beginning, and you've interviewed many world leaders, as you say, from Bill Clinton to Margaret Thatcher, of course Tony Blair was your boss, Nelson Mandela, but you said of all of them, Narendra Modi is without doubt the most intriguing and the hardest to fathom. Why is he the hardest to fathom?
I think he's the hardest to fathom because he only gives away what he wants to give away about himself and about his ideas and about what makes him as a politician. So he's quite a guarded man, although I spent, as you say, several hours talking with him. There were certain areas where he doesn't like to go, including, of course, his personal life, which he's perfectly entitled to keep to himself. And also, of course, he's a politician who's gone through a transformation. He came up through the RSS and through that brand of Hindu nationalist politics. He then more or less rebranded himself as the development man, presented himself to Indian electors as the development man in the election campaign. But of course, he has many supporters who are closely wedded to that political tradition. So that makes him intriguing and a fascinating man to look at. And also, of course, he's a man in his 60s who fought a campaign with extraordinary energy, and he managed to do things which much younger politicians than him in my country and in America failed to do, which is in particular to connect with younger voters, not only to connect with them during the campaign, but actually to enthuse them enough that they would come out and vote for him.
In fact, that's another thing you mentioned in the book is that, again, when you've heard world leaders who are good speakers, but they just cannot match the oratory of Narendra Modi. Would you say that in a sense he is one of the most well-spoken orators today that you've seen among world leaders?
I mean, I was at the Red Fort when he gave his Independence Day speech. I attended some of his election rallies in Maharashtra. And he's an extraordinary speaker. He has enormous crowds in the palm of his hands. And he does it without a well-prepared speech. It may be prepared in his head, but he doesn't have detailed notes in front of him. he seems to have this capacity to gather information from all sorts of different sources and craft it into a successful speech as he's going along. And I think that's a remarkable skill. In Britain, the leader of my party, the Labour Party, got into terrible trouble when he tried to memorise a speech and left out some of the most important parts. And that's not a trap that Mr. Modi seems to fall into. So if politics was just about being able to enthuse huge crowds, then I think certainly he's at the top of the league.
If you had to critique his style of leadership, though, I mean, having observed him, having had a chance to interact with him, what would be your key criticism of the man?
Well, I think sometimes a strength is also a weakness. And one of his great strengths is this absolute determination to win and a complete focus on victory. I don't think he ever considers failure as an option. He was way ahead of his party in that. He was the one who was convinced that they could get beyond the 272 seats needed to secure victory. But also, of course, he made it very much a campaign about himself. It was a Modi campaign. I describe it as a quasi-presidential campaign, although it's a parliamentary democracy. And there are risks in that because you raise expectations to extraordinary levels. And I think he certainly did that, and that's something that he now has to live up to as Prime Minister.
It cuts both ways, as you say. But in fact, when he took credit, and he has in the book, while speaking to you, he's taken credit for the election victory, and that created a bit of a controversy here because the Prime Minister's office actually issued a statement a few days ago saying that the PM was not trying to downgrade anyone or claim credit for the BJP's comprehensive win, that he was just expressing people's emotions. You know, in a sense, the PM was trying to downplay that he was saying this was all about me. Elaborate on what he told you, there. He clearly said that this was a vote about me, that I stood for the hopes of the people, which many would say is true.
Yes,
this was about
I think it probably is true. And just as a lot of people in my country voted for Tony Blair rather than for the Labour Party, I think a lot of people probably voted for Narendra Modi rather than for the BJP. So he personalised the campaign in a remarkable degree. And what he said to me during the interviews that I did for the Modi effect was that he was responding to a call that he sensed from the people. And they were saying to him, don't give us a party name, give us a name that we can trust, a personal name. So he made Bharosa, he made trust a really important issue in the campaign, and he made himself the person who he said could be trusted. So there's no doubt that it was very much a very personalised campaign. But at the same time, to be fair, he also, in victory, paid credit to the BJP, paid credit to all the people in the party at all different levels who had worked so hard to get him elected, and to the RSS as well, to the party workers at booth level in the RSS who worked extremely hard to get him elected as well. But when you make yourself so much the focus of the campaign, you can't really complain if people then say, well, you seem to be putting yourself as something bigger than the party.